Is it true that Jordan Peterson won't debate you anymore?
Well, it seems to be true. Basically, while we were finishing up on stage, he said he'd be happy to have another conversation with me. And then the second the debate was over, he bolted off the stage, went and locked himself in his dressing room. And what I was told is that his manager, publicist, whoever, basically said, you should never do another event with that guy. And so I haven't heard anything from Jordan Peterson since that night.
We all remember Jordan Peterson's epic debate with Matt Dillahunty, right? Well, it turns out that Jordan Peterson was so spooked and scared shitless by that debate that he has refused to have any further engagements with Matt. But what could have gone wrong? How could the eloquent, woke-busting Lobster King be so frightened of a debate with Matt Dillahunty that he's placed something of an embargo on interacting with him? I mean, there is no shortage of Jordan Peterson distressed such and such person out there, and he's always willing to engage with those who challenge him. Except he's not, and as Matt would go on to show, Peterson doesn't like engaging with someone who knows their onion.
You were incredibly polite and reasonable. It's actually, I don't think that did any favors for him, to be honest.
No,
especially when he said you can't quit smoking without a mystical experience.
I remember Matt being as calm and respectful in that exchange. I remember his bemused expression when Peterson declared you can't quit smoking without a mystical experience.
Just like people report other experiences as if they were religious or ghosts or whatever, we have no way of confirming that this something mystical or supernatural actually happened. What this is about the language.
Stops people from smoking.
Isn't it interesting how Peterson just confidently interjects with a point he thinks is brilliant and pauses as if to recreate the Kathy Newman gotcha moment? But Matt is no Kathy, so Peterson further digs his own intellectual grave with his own words.
Well, you can stop smoking without any sort of supernatural intervention.
No, not really.
You can't stop smoking without supernatural?
There aren't really any reliable chemical means for inducing smoking cessation. You can use a drug called bupropion. I think that's the one. It's whatever Wellbutrin is.
Is that supernatural?
No, you don't need a supernatural effect, but it doesn't work very well. But if you give people magic mushrooms, psilocybin, and they have a mystical experience, they have about an 85% chance of smoking cessation with one treatment.
Well, if psilocybin works as well as Peterson says, isn't that proof of a chemical method working, as psilocybin is a drug? Yes, some drugs do have hallucinogenic effect, but that doesn't make those effects mystical in any sense.
But that's kind of like evidence, you know. It's kind of like evidence.
Kind of like evidence? This is laughable. He knows he's been had, so he revises his statement to say it's kind of like evidence. There's no middle ground on this. It's either evidence or it's not, and it's clearly not.
It's evidence that you can take mushrooms and increase your chance of quitting smoking. But
no, it's not. It's indication that if you take mushrooms and you have a mystical experience, you'll stop smoking, because it doesn't work if you don't have
if you take mushrooms and you have an experience that you describe as mystical, then you'll increase your chance of smoking. But that doesn't tell me whether or not there was something to this notion that they had an experience that was supernatural in any sense.
So does the mystical experience occur only after taking mushrooms? If so, isn't the mushroom a drug responsible for such experiences and not some supernatural event? If on the other hand, the mystical experience can happen without taking mushrooms, then Peterson's point is totally moot.
I think before I even went to bed that night, I called Sam Harris. I probably didn't call him. I probably emailed him either that night or the very next day to let him know basically what happened. Here's where you can watch it, because I knew that Sam was going to be doing an event with Jordan within a month of what I did. And I think their event went really well, but I think probably the thing I'm proudest of, and I had really good help from a friend, Ozymandias Ramses, who many of you know, a philosopher that I've had on podcasts and stuff before. He was there at that event and asked one of the best questions during the Q&A, and it really led to some clarity. He's exceptionally good at being able to ask the right question that directs a conversation towards the linchpin that you need to pull.
Thank you both for a very interesting and revealing exchange. My question is for you, Dr. Peterson. You alluded to an important distinction between someone who would actually be an atheist and someone who merely professes to be an atheist. You implied that Matt and others are not genuinely atheists. I'm curious, why you think that. Is it just because we have sacred values, that everyone has sacred values? What, in your view, would a genuine atheist be like?
He'd be like Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment. And I can't really come up with a better answer than that, because it's such a complicated question that that's the right answer. You know, I love that book. It's an amazing book, and it's a great thriller, by the way. If there are some of you, perhaps many of you, who haven't read it, you really should read it, because it might be the greatest novel ever written. I think you can make a case for that. It's unbelievably exciting once you get into it. And Raskolnikov, he plots the perfect murder. It's so interesting because Dostoevsky, the last thing Dostoevsky ever did was make a straw man out of his opponents, let's say. What Dostoevsky did in all of his great novels was make his enemies, let's say, or make each of the positions that he was trying to contend with as powerful and admirable as he possibly could. And since he was an absolutely spectacular genius, he could really do that. And so Raskolnikov plots a murder, and he murders this horrible woman, who's horrible according to everyone who knows her, who also has enslaved her rather mentally feeble niece, and who does nothing but make people miserable consciously all the time. And he does that in order to save his sister from a rather sophisticated form of prostitution, to save himself from starvation so that he can become a great lawyer and help people. Right? So Dostoevsky sets up the stage. Here is the perfect situation for a murder, and all of the rational choices point in that direction. And Raskolnikov, who's also sort of torturing himself, or sort of tortured because he's sort of hungry and not very well, not thinking very clearly, he undertakes the murder, and he gets away with it. And before he does it, he berates himself in what I would describe as the negative atheistic style. And he basically says, look, there is every rational reason to split this woman's skull with an axe. Look at all the good I would do. Look at all the well-being I would enhance. And so he does it. And then all hell breaks loose. And what Dostoevsky see, Raskolnikov built himself up to the murder in part by laying out the rational case, but also by saying, well, there's no God. There's no metaphysical reason that's stopping me from committing this act. And there's all these reasons that appear perfectly rational, pushing me in that direction. Perhaps I'm nothing but a moral coward for failing to undertake it. So he does. But what he finds out is that he broke an inviolable moral rule, something that spoke to his own soul, so to speak. And the rest of the book basically involves his sequential post-traumatic unraveling.
On this point, I understand where Peterson is coming from, but he still somehow gets it wrong. It isn't that the true atheist is an evil person, as Peterson posits, but that, philosophically speaking, there is nothing in the atheistic worldview that stops him from being the worst version of himself. If there is no lawgiver outside the human experience, then morality can only arise as a matter of human convention and interactions, and is therefore entirely subjective. There is nothing stopping such human conventions from deciding that the greatest good is to do the greatest evil. But Matt did give a pretty reasonable response, and it seems that Peterson was so shook by that event and how Matt calmly deconstructed him publicly that he couldn't bear the repeat of a similar humiliation.
Jordan Peterson is an exceptionally strange person. We had dinner before the event, and he was only eating meat because that's his daughter's kick.
Yeah, the lion diet or whatever.
And literally, when I say he was only eating meat, it was the food they ordered was, I want a steak. I want it cooked on a grill that has been freshly cleaned, so there's nothing else. I want it cooked with salt and nothing else. No vegetables, no nothing. Just bring me out this slab of meat. And yeah, it was weird. But, you know, what are you going to do?
Oh, geez.